You ever wonder what makes a good character truly legendary? This is what we're going to talk about on this video and so much more. Welcome to the Be Well Forest, where a lot of the story of Matsu will take place. I'm IPC, I paint creatures, and I'm here to take you on a journey of the making of the epic story experience of Matsu. So hit that subscribe, that like, share this with anyone you think will benefit from it, and of course, leave comments. I'm really enjoying the comments and the feedback from all of you who've been watching the videos. It's inspired me to really unveil this journey of the making of the epic story experience of Matsu. I also talk about on these videos how being the creator of the epic story experience of Matsu, it evolves me, it expands me, it shows me who I am and where I am. So you're thinking, what makes a good character a truly legendary one? And through the writing and creation of this story, Matsu, I've come to learn it's how they transform the pain, the heartache, the loss, the abandonment, all those exterior challenges that this life and this existence throws at all of us. It's into giving the courage and strength to live their truth, their purpose for being alive. And I think it's in the mechanisms of how they work through any of their outside exterior conflicts, all the seeming obstacles and barriers, and that one resistance of there's something wrong with them in this world. And what makes them legendary is their path and how they start to turn all these tumultuous relationships, their brushes with poverty, their experience with chronic illness, into life experiences that shape and build and fulfill their life's mission on this existence or in the story world. And as the great Joseph Campbell said, it's their hero's journey. And I'd like to tell you a little story about my life. I've been educating a lot of you on my life and my path and, growing up and how I was so unique and went through so many different experiences. And some of them were very adverse. Like in my life, my mother, my father, and both sides of my grandparents, Obachan and Ojichan, were interned in the Japanese internment camps in 1942 during World War II. And how that affected my life in growing up is my mother and father were really young in the camps, right? But what they took away from it was a lot of fear of growing up Japanese in America and that it could happen again, like they could come and intern me. And so they took away my language, my name, my namesake, and most of all, they didn't even tell me many stories of what my elders, my grandparents, my Ojichan and Bachan did, as their livelihood and their life purpose. And so it kind of stripped me of all that. And the next thing I kind of went through was my father. He got stomach cancer when I was 11 years old. And basically, that's your gut. That's the place you have those gut feelings. And he was a good father. He didn't smoke or drink or even eat very, the foods that can, ruin your physical, being. And he passed away. And so that was a whole deal with abandonment. And then the year after, I went right back in the hospital, after I'd been in all the waiting rooms for my father and not knowing what was going on at 11 years old. And basically, they found an unknown illness, a tumor on my left arm the size of like a softball. And it was lodged on the main bone in the left arm. And so the doctor at the Children's Hospital at Stanford, the top doctor for children, he recommended that it be amputated. And basically, if it had a poisonous, life-threatening disease in it, I wouldn't live past probably 14 years old. And so that was very, very trauma driven. It caused a lot of trauma in my life and really didn't know, really what was going on. It's like my life was going to end before it even began. And then, you know, I went back into society and I kind of had a higher awareness because of that experience. And so it took me 5 high schools to graduate. And that was really challenging for me because I would sit in the back of the class and I just knew there was more to, you know, this rote learning of all the normal topics. And so it took me a long time. And so I got a lot of weird trauma from that, of like being in institutions and what they're really there for. And then after that, you know, I kept carrying the trauma along before I learned to transform it. And I had a lot of tumultuous relationships where, you know, the person just wasn't right for me. And so I had to move on. And so I experienced a lot of loss there, a lot of abandonment again. And until I learned really how to use the arts. And that's where the story of Matsu comes in, the creation of Matsu comes in. Because I learned to transform all those experiences into teaching myself how to be more resilient, to be tenacious, and thrive through any exterior challenges. And now I have the ability to influence my eternal circumstances, you know, which gifted me with immense love and the supernatural creativity to create the epic story experience of Matsu and share it with all of you. And this fulfills my life purpose and my mission, the truth, why I am alive. To be a poet, a storyteller, and a creative, imaginary artist who creates worlds that inspire, uplift, create a sense of transcendence for others to see their original, unique, and legendary beings in their own right. And this is where I've been sharing a little bit of the characters that are coming in Matsu. And I use a lot of what I just told you to be that creator of these legendary creatures and characters in the story of Matsu. And one is named Tyko. And he's a water creature. He resembles everything from a water bird, a water fish, and a turtle. He has a shell on his back, which represents, you know, kind of his shield, his samurai shield from the world. But he also has an amazing heart. And the Kappa have this magical water dish on the top of their head. It's like a dome and it has water in it, right? In the old legends, we don't know why exactly they had this dish. And so I explore that in the story of Matsu, and I turn my creatures into legendary creatures that basically can inspire and uplift you all in these times that we have a lot of challenges, you know, in our exterior lives outside of ourselves. And I think that water dish a lot, and I find this when I'm creating Matsu, is it has the ability to polish your story stone. And your story stone is what guides you. It has the information of your purpose and why you're alive, the truth to fulfill what you're doing. And then I think when you start to learn how to polish it, transform all those exterior circumstances into ways of finding who I am and where I am, you get access to the mechanisms of that story stone, which I call a poetic compass. And you calibrate it. You learn how to calibrate it through your uniqueness and who you are. And then it projects a painted poetic symphony. And a painted poetic symphony to me is your life purpose. It's a vivid, imaginary projection of it. And I believe through the story of Matsu, it can help a lot of us polish and shine our story stones. And so back to Tyko, right? His name is named after the Tyko drum. And the Tyko drum represents resilience. The Japanese still use it in a lot of their ceremonies as the thunderous drum that keeps the rhythm, your life-paced rhythm, your heartbeat, your real center of yourself on a steady path to fulfill your purpose and become legendary, become great in your own contribution and your gift to the planet. It synchronizes the energy. It rebuilds it to the next level existence. It's the arrival of something greater. Out of all that darkness, all those circumstances, comes that resonating sound of the Tyko drum. And that represents Tyko. It's spelled T-Y-K-O, but it's still Tyko. You know, he can break any storm. He can break through the darkened clouds to make it rain and replenish all the things got desolate and dry inside yourself. And then he transforms from a basic Kappa Yokai. Because in the beginning of the story of Tyko, he gets really affected by the explosion of the Atomikkkan. And the explosion of the Atomikkkan represents the diminishing, the dissolving of creativity, wonder, courage to be yourself, courage to listen to yourself, and of course to imagine your reality and project your painted poetic symphony from your story stone and do the work to calibrate your poetic compass inside yourself that will guide you to knowing who I am and where I am on the planet, in all your circumstances and all the opinions and identities that come at you, so you can really define yourself. So that's the first thing that happens to Tyko, is he gets really almost depressed and feels he can't create anymore. He's not inspired anymore. He's not curious anymore. He doesn't have the courage to be who he came to be. And so he goes back to 96542 to be with his father Toru. And Toru was one of the great Kappa Yokai that flew into the sun after the Atomikkkan exploded and carved a hole behind the sun and manifested through their domes the world of 96542, which is a yokai creature refuge. But then Tyko's living there. He's getting to know the ways of the legendary Kappa Yokais, the water creatures, and then his father leaves and just disappears, and that devastates him. So he almost loses it all. So he went through these trials and these tribulations of things that he didn't understand. And basically what he starts to learn how to do is use that thunderous taiko drum through himself to break through those dark clouds and get back to being the legendary yokai Kappa that's inside him. And so he gets on the yokai tube and he starts blasting his story of how he took those tumultuous, experiences and used them to shape and mold and prepare himself for the legendary journey that he starts to go on. So he inspires a bunch of other yokai creatures. That's one of the first tales we're telling, is Tyko Tail. He inspires a creature named Echo, who's a Yamabiko yokai. Then he inspired, Echo goes on to inspire another creature named Fuji, and she's a Rokokuro Kubi yokai. And then she sings in the crystal light. She makes the jade and the gemstones and amethyst and all the incredible crystal stones of the earth. And she vibrates them and she reaches Shigen in the hospital. And then the next day, Shigen gets released from the hospital. And that's where Tyko continues his journey. He becomes the right-hand companion and the aid to Shigen, realizing that all the poems and stories he was writing in the hospital, when he was just trying to get his mind off that he was going to basically die, he was polishing his story stone. He was projecting his painted poetic symphony. And he was going inside of his story stone and reaching the mechanisms and reprogramming them so it can guide him on his life purpose and his fulfillment of being a legendary senpai yokai. So that's the story of Shigen, that's the story of Tyko, and we will continue in the next video. So I want you to all be inspired. Find that courage in yourself, find that conviction in yourself, get that tenacity going, and find that purpose inside yourself. And come along for the epic story experience of Matsu. And we'll continue this making of the epic story experience of Matsu with I Paint Creatures. So leave a comment down below. Sign up for that Patreon, become a co-producer, start getting in on these meetings we're going to start having over Google Meets and Zoom, and get in on the streams on Twitch. I'm going to leave all the information down below for the Patreon, the Twitch. Come get one of my thank God paintings, which I do all these paintings of these creatures from Matsu, but they're not just a painting you get a blessing, something that's going to remind you and inspire you to find your purpose, to go in there and polish that story stone. Go in there and, project your painted poetic symphony, and go in there and calibrate that poetic compass that speaks to all of us when we be still and know. So thank you all for tuning in again. Share this video with everyone and make those comments. I love the comments, and they really inspire me to do what all I do. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed me painting Tyko in all the scenes and showing the different angles of the great thunderous Tyko character in the story of Matsu. Peace.